All right. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining. Today, we're going to talk about sustainable growth and what to do in an economic downturn. I'll hand it over to you, Jacko, our fearless founder and
Well,
educator, entertainer for the day.
yes, well, thank you all for having us. On that note, let's get set.
All right.
Well, welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about sustainable growth. Before we start, a few little things to talk about. One is please keep a close note on the chat channel. We use that chat very actively, and people like Julie and Sari and Rowie are noting that. Now, if you want to ask a question, pop in that question down there, and when you see +1, that's a trigger for our team to start looking like which question was asked, why was that question asked, and so on. And so they're going to take a look and bring up, said, Jocko, we got a question. And obviously that means that allows us that great questions get grouped up and that we can bring them to the front. Beyond that, this is a 90-minute session. We're going to keep it in 90 minutes. We are going to, I got it booked for 2 hours, so I'm good. After 90 minutes, I'm going to hang around for anybody that wants to ask a direct question, sees this and that. There is a key. This is a thing that we have, and this is called duck. Okay, I want to show you what duck means. When you type in duck, that means that I'm most likely that what you want me like this because you want to take a screenshot of something. That's completely fine. Take a screenshot. You can post it on LinkedIn. None of this is confidential. You can share this with folks, as long as when you put things on LinkedIn or on social, you make a reference to where you got it from. That's the only thing. Duck means I'm going to duck because you like what you're seeing. That has happened in the past, and I'm seeing a close eye, and then I will duck for you to take a screenshot. Yes, that is it. Several of you have already been in a revenue architecture class, and so if you have already been there, I'm going to quickly summarize. I don't think that summary will hurt you. It is intended to bring it all back together for you. It will, however, there will be new concepts added from the new and upcoming revenue architecture class, which is the same content, but modernized with the latest and greatest. So when you see the new revenue architecture class come out, for those of you already certified, don't worry, do I have to recertify? You do not. Those updates on those models will be sent out by Sari, who is starting up the community, getting you all those updates. Well, with that said, here we start. What we see here are like 3 specific trends that we're going to briefly talk about today. Growth, so the core of the message. The current state of affairs, so brief intro, and then we're going to talk about sustainable growth and how it relates to the blue part here on the upper part, growth. Okay, that's the nature. I have to say, in today's world, I have to start with the current state of affairs and how it applies to us. I have to level set. So many things are moving in our world that I got to make sure that we all start with a common place, a common ground that we can work from. If you look at the current events and the current state of affairs, we are foreseeing an economic disruption of sorts. Something is coming up. We already noticed that obviously in the stock market, and we are being prepared for like what that means. More severe things of that. Some people refer to that as a black swan event. I want to, looking up what black swan is. This is the description of a black swan event. An event with a severe impact that science and logic fail to predict, of which each event is very unique, and it is an event of random occurrence, which leads to obviously that it's hard to predict. What we see, however, today is I don't know if that is exactly what we see. I do see that we are experiencing events with severe impact. That is not to be denied. However, these events that we are experiencing have been predicted. They are relatively common, and they also occur in cycles. I'm going to bring that out to you in a second because these cycles we see all the time. And so, for example, we had the dot-com burst. I mean, that was predicted a year ahead. The housing bubble, look, for a lot of us it hit overnight, but there was a group of people who predicted this would happen. And as many of you know, it is predicted to happen again. These events are cyclical. COVID is as close to a black swan event as I could see. I mean, it was predicted. And we have had, diseases before, and not only that, we anticipated pandemics like that to occur, maybe not on that scale and size. But even now, as we speak, we're going yet through another ramp up of that. These events are cyclical and they are being predicted. And even Russia's aggression, the thing that we're all experiencing right now, it was predicted. And as you know, like if you've been long enough around in the world, you know that this is cyclical. They keep doing this. Now, if you look forward, we're going to see that those things happen again. And like it is no surprise that Jamie Dimon from the CEO from JP Morgan Chase said this is likely to happen, it's going to happen again, and we have to learn to deal with that. And that means that over the next 20 years, more of these cyclical events are taking place. And whether they are a black swan event, a one-off, or and so on, these events are likely to happen. In that time frame, many startups and scale-ups, from seed round to a successful outcome, often takes a minimum of 8 years. Yes, there are exceptions, but it takes a minimum of 8 years. It takes on average 12 to 13 years, and a reasonable successful company may take as many as 15 to 20 years. That means that over the next period of time, we will have to deal with more of these cyclical events. It is a given. Now, as an architect, we cannot say, you know what, I'm not gonna do that because like I'm really not in, I'm not gonna do that because it's a little bit challenging. I'm not gonna say it's like, you know what, we're not gonna build buildings in earthquake zones any longer. We're not. Or why not? Because it's difficult and they may crash and stuff like that. We can't do that. Instead, what we gotta do is we gotta design and build around that earthquake nature. We gotta build around what is given to happen. That is what we're here for today. Now, we're here to build revenue organizations with proper revenue architecture that can be sustained through these events that occur, through economic events that are super likely to occur. But let's be realistic. We can design all around it, but this is probably not the time to go buy a gas guzzler, right? This is probably not the time to go out. I mean, like if anything, with the current oil market and the prices at the pump, if you need this car, you probably need it for a very specific reason, not just because you want it, this is a car of choice to get you to and from the office while you have a like a desk job. Like this probably ain't the one. That finds itself as well in our world. This is probably not the time to go hire a $100,000 SDR first jobber, a $250,000 CSM that like is being promoted from a different role into that position, doesn't know exactly what to do that. The $1 million CEOs, or sorry, the $1 million VPs of sales, folks. Let's be at 2 million ARR. Let's figure it like that. That is gas guzzling, right? First class flights to SKOs. By the way, all these things are reality. This is not, I'm not depicting down here something that is not seen. I'm not saying these are common. I'm just saying it is not uncommon to see this. We are no longer surprised when we see this. These are things we are dealing with. And that is, the salaries keep going up in today's market. So yeah, there's more and more gas guzzlers there. Okay, so that's the current state of affairs. And what it tells us is that we got to learn to live and that we got to scale revenue in an environment that is predictable to have economic events occur. And we got to design around that. That is the role of today. And that's the role for me that I bring here to you today, is how are we going to do that? Second part that I want to bring up is, what is sustainable growth? Okay. It's pretty much what it is not. Like sustainable growth, something we've been speaking about since 2019. The reason why we launched revenue architecture, the reason why so many of you went through that class, is because what we noticed is what we were doing was unsustainable. What do I mean with unsustainable? You can't keep growing and throwing money at it as if you are Uber or WeWork, and then expect that you have a successful outcome. Sooner or later, you need to pay the Pied Piper. That means that bill is going to come back to you. For some companies that happens before IPO, to some companies that go post IPO. But what we see down here, we need to think about what sustainable growth is. Now, I start with what growth is, okay? Now, historically, we had growth at any and all cost. Essentially, if you look at scaling revenue, most commonly what people mean with scaling revenue is that you actually lower the cost of revenue while you keep growing at the same pace. You're lowering the cost. So you sign up a channel that adds more revenue at the lower cost. Your product becomes cheaper in delivery and creation, and cheaper resources. As a result, you start to scale growth. We historically in the VC startup scale-up market have foregone that mindset of cost and replaced it with speed. We need to grow at any and all cost at velocity. So we are seeing growth as a function of speed up to IPO, not as a function of cost. So when we talk about growth at any and all cost, that is a changing mindset. That mindset of, hey, whatever it takes is no longer the case. And what we're looking at, sustainable growth, is where we look at sustainable growth and say like, hey, what is the right way to grow and what do I base my decisions on? That picture tells us, in my humble opinion, what sustainable growth is. You may still choose to invest in your growth. You may choose to burn money. That may be a very good decision. Particularly early on, that is the right decision. Sustainable growth does not mean, as I see, like the other day in Popular, is like, oh, we got to stop the coffee machine, and we got to start, like as VCs, we got to start helping people clamp down on expenses. Look, the last thing you want to do is a person who is unfamiliar with a company, running a company, to start telling you that you should stop buying the expensive coffee or something like that. Like, saving cost is not sustainable growth. It is a sub decision of it, and it needs to come at the right time. But what sustainable growth is that you make an educated decision based on data and based on the stage where you're at, what you're going to do, and if that's worth what you're investing in. That's sustainable growth. Now, how we're going to do that, I'm going to show you how you can do that. We're going to show examples and practical insights and where things go wrong, and try to keep it as practical as possible. But we first have to start with understanding what growth is. Now, what I want to raise out down here is that currently the success rate of a startup is relatively low. 1 in 100 to 1 in 50 are able to get to an IPO, from 1 in 100 from seed funded, $100,000 seed funded via Crunchbase, 1 in 50 from Angelina A round. The penalty for failure is high. Folks, if you fail, you'll probably have to restart the company. And it also takes an extremely long time to figure it out. For all the high velocity we work in, it often takes years to figure it out. This is not something you do very quick. It's something that takes quite a while. So let's start with that growth. Now, before I get to sustainable growth, I cannot talk about sustainable growth if we do not have a basis of understanding what recurring revenue principles are. Because much of the sustainable growth lies solely on the very defined principles of recurring revenue. And if you don't have those principles right, we're designing the wrong thing, and we're making it not, it looks sustainable, but it's not. So for that, I'm going to first touch on a few of the key recurring revenue principles, and very specifically why that is so much needed before we get into sustainable revenue. Okay, so that's that. Just, like before we get started with this, do I have your attention? Everybody can hear me clearly. I'm looking at the thing. Can people just give me a ping where you're from? Tell me, type into the chat box. Jeremy, Greg, Stefan, where are you from? Show me in the world. Where are you all from? Can you type in? I just love to see it. Boston! Okay, stop the topic about, I am not going there. Newport Beach, Phoenix, Arizona, California, Madrid, San Francisco. Oh, I love this. Sweden, Tak. Colombia, San Francisco, where are my, Sao Paulo, there he is. I just wanted to say, where are my folks from Brazil? I see Renata there. Los Angeles, United Kingdom, Belgium. Goedemiddag, Roelof. California, Barcelona, look at that. Yes, Jim Hopkins, I see what you're saying. You picked up on that. Yes, we're not doing that. Yeah, okay, Madrid. Boca Raton. Okay, everybody, welcome. The chat is operational. Feel free to ask. Also feel free to start chatting, right? Say, hey, it's not clear what Jocko is explaining. And you will see, I love other people to step in and explain. We have a number of people of Winning by Design on the chat. They will facilitate the conversation, right? And then if it's a conversation that doesn't go right or needs help, just bring it up to me. +1 it and go like +1, and I'll pick it up. Okay. Let's get started. I need a tune to go started. What do I do this? I need some energy to get started with. Like, there's where we're gonna get started with. Like,
Let's hear it, Jacko.
there you go. There we go. No, I need a little bit more. I can't do that. That is, you know, like, I don't know, we'll pick something else later on. Okay, so data model. What I'm looking at is I'm first going to talk about these three models, and I'm going to summarize this. These are 3 of the 6 models that are brought up in revenue architecture, but they have a twist to it. So let's go first take a look at the data model. Summarizing what we've seen in the past is that the current classical marketing and sales funnel does not see recurring revenue. It does not look at it. Recurring revenue takes place outside of the purview of that. Now, I know some of you will say, Jocko, we have it. We do it. We do talk about it. Here's an in real life example of a client with $150 million revenue. This on the right, you'll see the deck that they have, 40 plus slides. And every month they review the deck and they go over the metrics. What are our MQLs? What is the status? What is the sign up? How many trials do we have and whatnot? Okay, what you'll see at the top is they have approximately, 10 plus slides in that deck goes to leads. Then they have another 10 based on the outreach campaigns. What are our SDRs doing? How many emails are sent out? Blah, 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 okay? Then, real life, I'm telling you, this is as real as it gets. We got 20 plus slides that talks about like, what does our revenue increase? What are our deal wins? And so on. What is the performance? What's the average? How many reps do we have on plan? Who's falling behind? All that stuff, okay? This is a 1 hour monthly status call for the entire executive team. Then the last 2 slides on that deck talk about what the net revenue retention is. The last 2 slides, I just want you to know, what do I mean with outside the purview? I don't mean that it ain't in the deck or that it's not discussed in the company. I mean, it is the last 2 slides out of a deck of 40 slides taking place over an hour. The likelihood of that being a meaningful conversation is slim. That's what I mean with outside purview. That's reality today that we see at many companies. It is a form, you may call it lip service. Now, obviously, as many of you know, in order to improve that, we feel it is absolutely critical that we no longer look at this on the first principle that growth is primarily sourced by winning more deal. We need to look at the entire funnel, the entire thing that we are seeing, and not just, like that sits on the right. Wonder by wonder. Folks, there's a whole new world on that right side. I say this, and I know the music is playing. Fantastic point of view. But like, no one to tell us no. It's really challenging, folks. I'm really like, we often see that the head of CS, the head of that recurring revenue, does not have a senior seat in the executive team, is not completely represented. And there's a whole new world underneath that we need to understand. It is not uncommon, as I'll depict you as soon as examples where these companies are running at 70, 80, 90 million dollars and recurring revenue is not on the front of their mind. That is where the sustainability comes from. It's the source of the sustainability. And so what you'll see down here is obviously, if many of you are familiar, is with the bow tie. Now, the reason why the bow tie is so important, because it puts an equal value to the right side of the bow tie as to the left side. It is a uniform data model that allows us to communicate in a proper way, and it is centered around the delivery of recurring impact to establish recurring revenue. We need to realize that in today's world, that recurring revenue is a result of, and not the start of something. We need to keep delivering to that impact, then we keep growing. That draws on the first key principle of recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact. If we set the goal in the company as recurring revenue, that goal is wrong because it is an outcome. It is not necessarily what you're going to focus on. If you establish yourself, we need to provide our customers recurring impact, then you have to trust that recurring revenue will be the natural outcome of that multiplied by a certain factor. That means that with that point of view now, we see everything included, and that is another important recurring revenue principle. Recurring revenue operations requires a data model that covers the entire customer journey, all of it, from prospect to LTV. That's what we need to look at. That tells us about the data model. If I go a step deeper, I'm going to talk about the mathematical model. Now we know what the data model looks like. Let's take a look at the mathematical model. You've seen this before. Many of you have. I'm just retouching it with some little tweaks to it. What you see here is that historically we look at the business, as a constant. So for example, if you buy something with an upfront cost, startup cost, that delivers a constant. If you grow customers, 2 customers bring 2 times revenue or something like that, then you grow linear. What we see and what we're going to talk about is that our customers in recurring revenue and the bow tie as a whole doesn't operate on a linear, but on a polynomial behavior, okay? And the polynomial behavior is exponential, x to the power of n. The key behind this concept, the key behind that is to realize that if I use the same amount of time and I use the same amount of increase like I'm demonstrating down here, but with the x at the bottom, it creates disproportionate improvement, okay? Disproportionate impact. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say is like, you know what if this line down here, that one down there, I'm going to make that is about what, 3 years? So let's say that's from 36 months LTV right here. And I'm going to extend that. Let me move that line over. That is 36 and that is 48. So if I extend my lifetime of value of my customer from 36 to 48, look at that, I'm going to get that level, what I have noted down here, that is going to come out of that, right? Now, if I extend in that same realm from, in this case, it looks like to be 60. And so I extend that from 60 months and I extend that at that spot to 72 months. Like down here, I know I'm going to run that arrow is going to run short, but like I'm going to 72. You're going to say that is no longer generating the same amount of revenue. It is generating a significant increase in revenue, like double, triple. This means that the manipulation or to give the customer a great experience and extend their lifetime value gives you a disproportionate amount of revenue growth, or a disproportionate amount of profit is a better way of looking at it. That disproportion takes place across the entire bow tie, not just because you want the right deal, not just because you want more deals. Essentially, it shows that the right customer can generate a lot more profit, the right customer. Now, what also is known is that if I look at the client acquisition cost, which on average is somewhere between 15 and 25 months, that if the average client acquisition cost is, and I'll pick 21, right? The average CAC equals 21. You have heard me say this before, but I want to point out to you why this is so important. CAC is 21 months. LTV to CAC ratio, people, what is the most common LTV to CAC ratio, the minimum one to preferred via the chat? What are we looking at it? What are we looking at? Type it in. 3.5, yeah, that's a good one. 3 to 1, yeah, that's right, 3 to 1. But 3.5 to 1 fits well within that. It's just a harder number for me to calculate. But 3.5 to 1, but 3 to 1. Let's say that 3 to 1. That means that the average lifetime of my client needs to be times 3, 63 months. Okay, I need to spend 63 months here on the right, 63 months doing this 63 times if it's monthly, or 5 years if it's annually, to keep repeating that to make sure that what I'm doing is actually making sense. 63 months. That means that this down here, to bring it from 63, or in this case 60, but bring it from 63 to 72 gives you disproportionate impact. You want to roll into that. That is a mindset shift. Most companies don't think about it that way. This is the result of marginal gain resulting in disproportionate improvement. What seemingly is small has a big impact. Not only that, but what happens on the right is that if I keep renewing it every year, and I keep renewing it year after year, and I increase every year, for example, my sales price, I increase that by a certain percentage. If I keep increasing that, it keeps compounding and compounding and compounding. Every year 8%, 1.08 to the power of 5, that is a lot more than 8% across the entire thing. We're talking about like 30-ish% increase just because of that. That compounds with time. We call that time here at the top is often, that compounding time is often referred to as periods, because sometimes a period is annual, sometimes a period is monthly, like whatever it is, whatever the business model is, that compounding takes place over periods. That period make this line steeper. You see down here, it makes it go steeper. It makes the disproportionate impact even more. Now think about this. If on average we can lift up our client, our LTV, and on average goes from 26 months to 27.8 months, wow, that is what we're looking at. Or from 26 months on average to like 26.3 months. Small gains, but because it compounds or because it multiplies over so many accounts, it's fantastic, okay? If I then say I'm gonna increase my price, on average, the average increase in price is 6%. I'm going to bring that to 6.3%. If I now increase my LTV and increase my price, those combined compound on top of each other and generate significantly more. You need to know how much. This tells us that the mathematical model on the left and on the left is exponential, and on the right it's compounding. That is primarily what I want you to start thinking about in that mathematical model. That's the key thing where I go like, I get what is going on down here. Okay, don't worry too much. I know on the left, hey, marginal gain. On the right, small change, small upsell, small cross-sell, doing that every year, every month, huge impact. That's the reason that the mathematical model is so important, because that is very different to the linear behavior that we often look at our companies. We often act and behave in a linear way. We often say, in order to double the sales, we need twice as many leads. That is not necessarily the case for those of you or alumni of this way of thinking. So that is where we go next. Next, we now are combining those two. I'm combining these two models. I'm going to combine the data model and the mathematical model, and I'm going to try to demonstrate to you what happens. Now, what we see down here is on the left is on the right, left acquisition, on the right is expansion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a growth pattern, okay? So in the beginning, I'm starting on day zero. Day zero, I have no sales. So I'm essentially, I'm acquiring new customers, okay? So early on, growth comes from winning deals. To grow, I need more leads, better win rate, less discount, shorter sales cycle, right? Some of that, like you may not need all of that, but like as you progress, that's the mindset. How can I sell more? You really focus on winning deals. You're trying to get revenue second. That's where you're going. As after 2 to 3 years, obviously after 12 years, you start to see that the growth starting to exist and your existing customers are starting to shift in, right? You want this to be as soon as it happen. What you now have a mindset of reducing churn. Hey, I know which clients I want. I just don't want to lose them. And you start to dabble in expansion. Most companies don't do that straight away. You're at $3 million ARR, $4 million ARR. You're still in the mindset of, I'm growing faster by winning new deals than by reducing churn. And you often think, you know what? I need to lose some of these bad customers. They're giving me headaches. Glad that they churn. But you'll see that the balance starts to shift. As I get to a certain point in time, and this is often in the realm of 30, 40, $50 million, we start to see that growth from acquisition and expansion starts to come into balance. On the right, I see I run a closed loop, and now I'm still expanding, but I'm also selling new products to the customer. I'm not only upselling more seats or more usage, I'm selling cross-selling. I'm potentially selling new products in there. I'm like $30, $40 million. I want to sell more stuff that I've developed since they joined the client. As I shift to the right, company's now maturing. It's maturing from existing customers. It's growing. And we now start to see we need to bring down the cost of that growth. I can no longer spend that much on growing because I need to make more money. Now, what you'll see here is that this is often a bottleneck. You'll see down here, if sales stay involved with the upsell and cross-sell, this is, as I will show mathematically in a second, this is where the machine breaks because I keep the expenses high. I may be growing, but I'm not bringing my cost down. Now, as I tilt all the way to the right, what you'll see down here, this is what we see commonly. All the way to the right, the company has achieved somewhat of a market maturity. And what you'll see is that those who sell B2B platforms, and I say that specifically, this is not PLG, we'll go into PLG centric later on, but this is not PLG. Those who are B2B platform end up, we see this all the time, to have about 5,000 customers. It is about 5,000 customers that comprise their entire world. Okay, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 or 3 or something like that, but it ain't 100,000. What you find is that those people who often have that many customers, you'll see that the growth and the revenue per client is very small when you have that amount of customers. But if you see large B2B platforms, they generally lean on 5,000 core customers. Again, you may have 20,000 others. I'm talking about the core of your business. So that tells us, okay, now I know how this model works. I know where I'm going. I start to get the hang of it. Now where I'm going to go next is the growth model, and then I'm going to combine the two to give you a visual understanding how sustainable is like driving your car in an effective way from point A to point B. I'm going to show you how to drive that sustainably and show you which companies and like companies like Datadog who've done that, how they do that and how they position themselves. Here's talking about Datadog. Here's the numbers. I show you two charts. Both are the same. This is the growth curve. What we see down here is Datadog's numbers, but as you'll see, it is on a logarithmic scale. Now, when you have exponential growth, or you have like that ramp growth rate on an exponential or logarithmic scale, what you'll see that essentially forms a straight line. So you'll see that straight line. You look down here at the scale, you go like, okay, that has good growth into it. It's a little bit, like now, what I'm doing, I'm going to change the axis as you see down here, and I'm making that scale linear. So instead of like, 10 to 100 to 1,000, I'm going to go 100, 200, 300, 400. When I see that, I really see that curve going up, right? That's the curve I want. That's the growth curve I'm looking for. Now I'm going to take that growth curve, I'm going to zoom out, I'm going to put an XY axis on it, I'm going to draw that analogy, and I'm going to go like, where's that thing going? Where's that line going? That line is going up. But where? When does it stop? And unlike many people who say, many founders like me who say, there is no stopping us, we got to keep growing. There is a point of end. There is a moment in time that growth no longer is achievable. That point in time is referred to as total available market, but that saturation follows an S-curve. Eventually you will start to win all the customers you can, or whatever is available, attainable, and you'll start seeing lesser new growth from new accounts. That is what happens to the right. That total available market, this follows an S-curve. This does not follow unlimited growth. Now, where I'm going to point to you is that S-curve, that growth in recurring revenue is governed by this S-curve. We need to know there is an end and there's the capability. Now, can I increase it? Absolutely, you can increase total available market. You can do that. Let me depict that. You can acquire another company, right? You have a new product. You can launch a new product, right? You can do all kinds of things. But with your existing product and your existing go-to-market model, there is an S-curve that you follow. And that S-curve ends at total available market. Where you are on that S-curve, this is where the money machine starts to work. Where you are depicts what your growth rate is, or where your growth rate is depicts where you are. And so, for example, at this particular point at $100 million, that took the company, let's say, 8 years, it has this particular growth rate, and it is on that point on the S-curve that it finds itself. Okay? This is important to understand, that growth rate, based on how much money you have and ARR you have and how long it took you, points a dot on this line. So for example, early on you can have a super high growth rate, like PLG, I'm going from 1,000 to 10,000 users. If your total available market is 7 billion people, that means that the growth rate is super high in those early days. But what you notice is that growth rate is super important to indicate as a function of ARR and as a function of time. Where are you? Because that growth rate, and typically when I go IPO, I'm talking about scaling up. I want to grow faster. I want to add more people. I want to have more leads, open up new markets. I'm scaling up. And when I scale up, the scaling up comes after the startup market. And the startup market, we often determine early on is like, hey, you need to start soon. First one gets it. First one. But if you know, LinkedIn wasn't the first one, right? Many things. It's not the first one who wins. That's the statement that you have heard, this early bird gets the worm. There's a plus, oh no, that's fine. Early bird gets the worm. What you see down here, you know, if you're familiar with the saying, and I probably butchered it up a little bit, it's the second mouse who gets the cheese. It is not the first one who wins. We commonly see that it's the second or the third ones to win. And why is that? What we notice is that the lessons that are learned by that first contender, that lesson learned down there is often applied by the number two. But the amount of resources that were required to learn that lesson, you know, that caused a lot of burn. And so what you'll see, it is the second one or the third one that finds itself. So what are we really measuring when we say first? What is first? We're talking about who's the first to scale. Not the first one who started, not the first one who had revenue. Who's the first one that gets to a point that can scale the revenue. And that scaling is based on your growth rate. Right? Some of you may know T2, T2, D3 historically, triple, triple, double, double, which now is becoming T3, D3, triple, 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 double, 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 right? Like this, we are seeing now the first one who hits that scaling point, who gets the revenue and scales that up. That's where we're starting to look at. That depicts that we have two very distinct different stages. First on, I got the early stage, the startup. Find out what works, find out what scales, establish go-to-market fit. And second, once I found that out, do more of it and don't stop doing what's working, but do stop doing what's not working. Scale that up. That goes into a grown-up mode. After I've scaled up, and this dot may be an IPO, for example, then I need to do something and do it more efficiently. Now, after that, I now know what I'm doing. I'm going to, you know, like this is enterprise level. I'm going to expand the market. I'm acquiring a new company. I'm growing up. I'm whatever I'm doing. I'm launching new product. I'm merging new product, whatever it is. But I want to lift that thing up. I want to sell more into my market. I'm not holding myself tight to the TAM. I'm going to create something more, right? And, you know, like pick a familiar product or pick a product you're familiar with, whether that's Apple, whether that's Tesla, whether that's, you know, like you start buying more stuff from them. You're increasing the market. Now, it starts to get tricky the moment in time that I start to bring in the IPO. The IPO can take place anywhere across these four stages. An IPO is a monetization moment that is often defined because it's a clear defined moment, lots of paperwork needs to go into place and it launches. But that IPO can take anywhere from your company with somewhere, well, actually nowadays can go as low as, or used to go be as low as $80 million and go as, you know, like $300 million. I just picked the margin, the range of 80 to 250 million. It often takes place between 7 to 15 years. But it takes place anywhere. It can take place in scale up, grown up, and enterprise. And this is where the sustainability issue starts to come in. What I'm going to depict to you in a second, that if you make this too soon, and what we see, if you are here and you're not aware that you're here, and you're scaling something wrong, you will not be able to hit the IPO set metrics. And we have ample of examples these days, unfortunately, of companies that have gone IPO and that have been unable to hold up that valuation and see a drastic devaluation. Now, mind you, I told you I'm going to say this, I'm going to write it down, right? Okay, so early on, traditionally, growth is a function of cost. That was the original growth, revenue, scaling revenue, which is growth. Early on is a function of revenue as a function of cost. Okay? Or I'll make it growth as a function of cost. I want you to keep this in your mind. That's how it used to be. If you Google scaling revenue, you're going to see scaling revenue is growing your revenue at a lower cost. Now, we changed that. I said it a second ago. Does anybody says? I said, hey, we stopped that. What is scaling revenue in the startup world? What is it function of? Growth is a function of what? Can anybody help me? What did I say earlier? Growth is not a function of cost. Growth in our world, scaling revenue is a function of what? Type it in the chat if anybody knows. Impact, good. That's not necessarily impact. No. We're close. Speed, velocity. Okay. And so I'm going to type in there velocity. Now, why is that? Look, this is not what I'm telling you is not a secret, but you got to understand this. Why is this a velocity? Well, guess who is driving you in the startup scale-up mode? Guess who's driving you to go faster? Who's telling you? Who's telling you every executive meeting, oh, you need to go faster. Revenue needs to go faster. Revenue needs to go faster. Who's telling you is your board members who are generally VCs. And what they do, and it's very good. You know, I'm not trying to argue that it's not the right way. I'm just trying to say is they're going to get an exit out of that. So the faster you get there and the bigger it is, they're going to get a bigger exit out of that. And so they did two things. First of all, they made it dependent on growth. And then the second thing that historically they did, they made that growth and the growth rate that you're in dependent on your valuation. Higher growth rate, boom, more money. And then they build out. And so then you are post-IPO, you got a new group of investors, and those investors goes like, well, I like the growth, but my gosh, it comes at a high cost, which may be okay if you're Uber or WeWork or stuff like that. But it's really hard if you're just a regular down the line, you know, like company that has to deal with that, and you can't scale this down here. Okay, I want you to know what happens. I want you to stick with me, follow my thinking, follow what happens here. I am somewhere a dot on this line, and I am growing very fast. Okay, I'm growing very fast, but I see that growth is starting to slow down a little bit. And why is that? Growth rate naturally declines. From $1 to $5 million may be an easy, but from $100 to $500 million ain't gonna happen overnight, right? I can go from $1 million to $5 million in a year, but to go from 100 million to 500 million is a rare feat that we do not have to discuss about today. Those companies that do that are in blitz scaling mode. That's not what we're talking about. So naturally, if your number gets bigger, your growth rate comes down. So what is every revenue leader doing? I can't let the growth rate down because that is how I'm going to be raised on. So what am I doing? And I'm going to get a round of funding somewhere along the line. Boom! I'm adding a round of funding right here. And I'm adding a C round. I'm going to get, you know what? I'm a successful company. People love me. I'm going to add $50 million. Is $50 million, is that a good number for everyone? I'm going to get a C round down here at 50 million. Okay, you're the CRO. You're headed for IPO. And don't try to be duck, please. Oh, I need to duck, thank you. Duck. I am ducking. Boom. Okay, I'm at 50 million. What I'm actually doing is I'm gonna clean this up for you briefly. So give me a second. Okay, Control X, there you go. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I am at 50 million. I got a $50 million round down here, right? And I want to keep that growth up. Where am I going to spend my $50 million on? I just got a C round. I'm the new CRO. And the growth is great, but I want more. Where do I get my growth from? What do I do? Where do I spend the money? And I'm not saying you should spend the money. Where does a lion's share of the VPs of marketing and sales, where do they spend the money on? I mean, remember, we're thinking in funnel, right? I'm looking at the funnel. Where are they going to spend their money on? New IEs. Thank you, Jeremy. Absolutely. Let's get some new IEs. The average, let's say 180K. So let's hire, 20 of those, right? More SDRs for more leads. Okay. Let's get 80K SDRs to fight that. So I got 20. So at least add 10 of those, right? More SDRs for more leads. Marketing. Okay. Let's double my SEO spend. Let's do that times 4. Let's do a new website. Let's spend, right? All that stuff. What are you doing right now is that you're increasing your expenses. Your expenses are going up. Your CAC is going up because these people are not going to be productive right away. And we know that the new revenue that they're bringing in most likely are not gonna bring enough, right? I mean, I'm trying. And so now I'm gonna get some out of it. It's great. I hired the best SDRs. I got fantastic AEs. And so I'm going to keep my growth rate at approximately the same pace. Now, mind you, at that point in time, my growth rate to keep it at pace means I got to probably do X millions of more revenue every month, right? It's not like, hey, I was growing at $2 million a quarter. in order to keep the growth rate up, I got to keep doing 2. No, as your number grows, you got to do 3 million a quarter, 4 million, 5 million. So you're bringing all these people to do that. So right now, I'm entering here and I'm going IPO because I grew my money so fantastically, right? I spent it, right? And suddenly overnight, boom, my investors tell me, well, that's fantastic, but your cost is too high. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna give everybody a salary cut? I mean, like, growth suddenly came at too high of a cost that I was ramping up and hiring more people and more campaigns. I am there, IPO, boom. My VCs not bail out, but they get, their investment, they get their ROI, and thankfully they helped you. That's fantastic. But you sit there as a company, you go like, I got a high expense. I can't fire my VPs of sales or all my sales leaders. I can't fire that. I can't stop my campaigns. I got to keep running, but it's coming at a high cost and the cost is ever growing. That's unsustainable. That's where you're going to feel it. That's where the pain hits you. Now, if you move that IPO sooner, you're going to hit that pain point sooner. If that IPO is later, you may have been able, but if you move that here, you're going to have that pain point. And so what I'm going to talk about is, how do you fix that? How do you fix that problem?
Yeah. And Jacko, if I could just bring it back, I think this is definitely on the horizon for a lot of people who are here today. It's how do you fix it? And also, especially as we are entering these potentially uncertain times, what should we foresee? What should we do in preparation for it?
Yeah. What you have to do is dependent on the stage that you're in. And so what I'm going to depict down here is there are 4 stages. Each of these stages has a different focus. What I dare to say to you is that the focus you have in one stage, what makes you successful in one stage, will make you fail if you keep that focus in the next stage, which makes you fail in the next stage. What I'm going to draw down here as an example to make that point ample is early on in this stage down here, I am growing on what we call founder sales. I need my founder early on in order to help me sell. And so it's super critical to have that. Now, if I'm PLG, then my founder is not helping me sell. My founder is founder-led customer success. I mean, we saw it with Eric Yuan at Zoom. I see it with Superhuman. These are the founders no longer selling, but these are the founders that taking product upgrades, requests, and fixes via Twitter and over the weekend are creating this. It's the same thing applied to a different part of the growth metric. It's either founder-led sales or founder-led customer success. And in this stage down here, it makes you very successful. It makes you a successful company. But I'm telling you, if you deploy founder-led customer success and sales down here, that ain't gonna work. What made you successful here is not gonna make you successful there. Now, you have to go through this phase to do that. It's not like you say, okay, we'll never do that. No, you need that at that stage. So what makes you successful in one stage will be your Achilles heel in the next stage. So you need to learn what does that. Second, it doesn't mean that we have to forgo some of these metrics. They need to build on top of each other. So if I'm a scale up, I still need to realize what makes me successful and build on that. But I can't stay stuck in this mode with these metrics and think I'm going to grow up. This transition causes the disruption. Because what means is the executives that were very important down here are no longer important down there. This means an organizational change and seniority because we're talking about a different part of the team. Now what happens is either this team gets fired and you bring on a new team that you bring less experienced. This team holds their claim and starts to grow up but don't know what they're doing. 1 to 2 year delay for them to learn. A new person comes in and has the old team. We get internal politics taking over. That changing from one and the metrics and the understanding from one stage to another, that is where we're coming. That means that if we use the recurring revenue principles as the fundamental part to move through these stages and understand and not make it about politics, not make it about who's what and like what your career is. If we make it about metrics and then apply that, but first make it about metrics. Number 1, recurring revenue is a result of recurring impact. If you don't deliver your customer's impact, you won't get the recurring revenue. The customer will not renew. And as we pointed out, with client acquisition costs as much as 20 months, we're talking that you need at least 5 years of that client to renew. You don't deliver recurring impact for 5 years, they're going to be gone after 2 years. And that's not good enough. You're not going to get your growth metrics from that. Recurring revenue requires a view of the entire bow tie. I cannot just look at the marketing and sales funnel. Essentially, just looking at the marketing and sales funnel excludes that part where the growth takes place. Last, or the third part, recurring revenue's growth is based on the exponential growth that takes place in the right side of the bow tie. So if I exclude that and I keep growing, then for sure I keep the wrong mindset. And then finally, final thing, it takes place in 4 stages, of which each stage has a different focus. And if you stay stuck in the stage of the previous, you're not going to get there. That I'm going to combine and try to show you how that works. Now I'm going to combine the data model. I'm going to combine the data model, the mathematical model, and the growth model, or the bow tie, the mathematical growth along the S-curve. So here I have it. In the beginning, startup, acquisition growth, build momentum, founder sales. Let's go win deals. Love it. Bring people, cut through the forest with like a machete, like go, go, go. Get the right customer. What you'll see down here, founder-led sales, founder-led customer success. FS and FCS stands for that. Founder-led sales, founder-led customer success. Then after a while, we're going to go, look, let's make sure we get the right customers. We're getting a lot of them right now, but I'm at $7-8 million. Let's get the right customers. Okay. Then I start saying, okay, my whatever, I'm an enterprise sales, PLG sales, whatever that, it works. I need to launch another model to keep the growth up. I'm going to open up an enterprise market. I'm going to sell to teams instead of individual users. I'm going to keep going. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to enter a point where expansion comes in. Look, the balance, you see it's in balance. Ideally, this is right where you are at IPO. You're in balance. You can now grow both. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to grow faster because my customers are starting to contribute. I'm going to grow fast. That model is leaning to the right. I'm now coming so far to the right. I'm going like, oh, growth is going to slow down, but not to worry. It's all about profit. I'm post-IPO. So I'm going to lower my cost 25 or 30%. I'm going to lower it so much that my CAC is actually reducing in a way because I'm lowering my cost of that. And then eventually I'm going to enter a grown-up stage and grow into an enterprise where I'm essentially growing the market. I'm acquiring companies. That's the motion that companies need to go through. That is the ideal motion. And as I see, and I'll play it out a little faster, okay, faster, and I'll duck to make it even better. And so what you'll see down here, look at that bow tie. It starts in the beginning left, and as it goes, it switches to the right. And why? Look at that in the middle down here. You see that signal down here? That one? That is what starts to weigh in. Your compound impact from an existing customer starts to sway the weight to the right. That is where that essentially is sustainable growth. That's the point that I want to point out to you. Here's examples of how it doesn't work. The pain points. Now, we call this in real life stories. In real life stories means I was there, I saw it happen, I may have changed this number and I may have changed it, but not to the detriment of the use case. I'm just telling you, these are in real life stories. Because sometimes you go like, dude, that ain't the truth. And for those of you who've been at these companies, you go like, no, actually, yeah, that does happen, right? Yes. Anyway, so that does happen, it's a problem. And to be honest, sometimes it's very tricky to talk about. Okay. Let's take a look. $120 million. Company is right there. It's gunning for IPO. Okay. You see where I'm zooming in on the right. It's a scale up. And this company was, I would say 11, 12 years, somewhere. It's 11 and 12 years and it reaches this moment, at this particular point in time. Here's the in real life scenario of what occurred. This company is called Acme. It's going IPO. It did a mezzanine round. Now, if you look up mezzanine round, it's generally used to tune things up. And it used its funds to hire another 50 sales rep with an OTE of 350K. Listen to this. They got a mezzanine round. $120 million ish, or sorry, at $120 million. They got a big mezzanine round, like $50, $60 million, whatever that was, to tune things up. Okay. They are going IPO. They see that their growth is slowing down. This happened. It's actively still happening. They have a record IPO, a record. It was written about in the market everywhere. Like, oh my gosh, what a fantastic, I mean, like, it's fantastic. 6 months later, or in this case, a year later, stock has dropped, marketing sales, like spend is way too high compared to the revenue growth. And this is deemed by the post-IPO market as unsustainable. Why is this? The principles of revenue. Growth rate declines naturally the more you go up. And what happens is that your acquisition cost, as you're trying to avoid the slowing down in growth, as you try to avoid that, your acquisition cost is increasing because you're spending more on lead campaigns that are going to give you less leads. You know this, for those of you who are familiar with this, this is referred to as the rule of 40. This means, or rule of 40 is one of those rules of thumb that governs this. It says like, hey, growth and profit combined should be bigger than 40%. And if it's not bigger than 40%, then you probably should grow faster, or you should probably make more profit. So if you have 20% growth, you should have 20% profit. The problem is, and I'll draw it out here down here, the rule of 40 is no longer the rule of 40, but is rapidly becoming the rule of 50, or even more rapidly the rule of 60, which means that the demand for profitability is pushed forward and comes into to a stage that it's pre-IPO. That is what's happening, and that is what our VCs and your market will refer to as sustainable. That will include that. Am I growing and am I making a profit? A new metric will appear, of which rule of thumb, the rule of 60 is or rule of 40 is a rule of thumb that they will start leaning on, or already are leaning on. Mind you, this is not about the price of the coffee, okay? The unexperienced VC will try to bring the cost down. You should, no, that's not. This is not about the mindset and are we having the right office and stuff like that. Stuff like that is relatively low cost. We're talking generally about, are you on the right go-to-market plan? Are you, are you spamming your customers? Are you winning the right customers? Like, that is what we're talking about. Okay, customer, listen to this. Again, true happen story. Correction takes place. In the months leading up to the IPO, they come to the conclusion that this was not going to work. And in this case, a second scenario, added 50 sales rep with an OTE of 350. That's the key down here. And what do? They ask their salespeople to take over expansion sales. So customer success is pushed aside, and sales is being asked to step in and to monetize the existing customers with upsells, cross-sells, and so on and so forth. The company grows as a result, but sales grows, pushes it in, and comes with the mindset of one time, let's get this done, prides itself, great thing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm actually, a lot of times good things happen in there. But what is unknown is that we are now acquiring existing customer business at the cost of acquisition dollar premiums. To acquire a new customer comes at a premium acquisition cost. To acquire new revenue from an existing customer cannot be used at the same acquisition cost because my cost of growth continues to be the reason why I'm trying to solve for this problem. Okay, you got more growth, but it's coming at an extreme premium of $350,000. People that probably should be paid, $180,000, $200,000. I'm just figuratively speaking, whatever your local market is, apply those salaries. That is unsustainable. Acme is paying a huge premium for expansion sales. We are paying acquisition premiums we're paying premiums of acquiring new deals on existing customers. Unsustainable. Essentially, I'm going to visualize what happened. This is what happened. You see that? Oh, grow. Finger on the scale. We're going to keep sales. We're going to keep growing from revenue. We're going to keep growing using the cost structure. And and what you'll see is like, at this point in time, the customer success, your most successful customer success reps or executives know that they are no longer in a successful company. They bail out. The system breaks. What this requires, you're costing. The most important thing is you're gonna lose 2 to 3 years in this. You're gonna lose your senior management on top of it. You need to revamp. Company like Winning by Design comes in and needs to clean up, not the mess, but to clean up what's left, right? That happens. Number 3, what should have been done? We hired 40 account managers with an OTE of 180, and instead, post the C round or post the mezzanine round, we focused on customer success. We made that the #1 priority in the company. We depicted processes and playbook. It was customer success. Why? Expansion sales characteristics. Grows faster, comes at a lower acquisition cost. On top of that, it generates new pipeline, word of mouth lead gen if you do it right. That's sustainable. That problem, which previously was at IPO, is due to the nature in the industry, coming, in this case, downstream. It's coming to us. It's coming to us in the early stage startup world. Let's take a look at what goes wrong in the early stage. When I'm here, I'm going to sit and, let me duck a little bit. Like, yeah, burn, burn, burn. Exactly like this. Burn money, burn. Now I'm sitting in that early stage, and those of you familiar, let's say I got triple, right? I went from 1 million to 3 million to 8.6. Again, this is a real and in real life use case stories. And they came in at like a couple of, we started measuring, by the way, we start measuring once they surpass 1 million-ish, 900K, 1.1, 1.2. Then we start measuring, right? So this company came in at 900K, triple, 2.7, triple to 8.6, triple. That's how they came in. And they're ramping up for that C round. Now, what we noticed in that C round, let's hone in on that particular part. Where did this go wrong? Where did this sustainable model suddenly become unsustainable? Well, Nuco, in this case, not Acme, Nuco had 178% growth and came in at $8.6 million in ARR, but was spreading it across 3 GTM motions. Now, what we see, the Nuco then closed a phenomenal C round, $50 million, but 50 months later, it has burned through all its funding and its growth length has declined way out of proportion. It declined way too much. 178 is not sustainable. We get that. So you may drop from 178 to 152 or 140, something like that. But you're not dropping to 108. That means that growth is coming down. Why is growth coming down? What is the problem? Here comes the problem from. Now, in this process, the VP of sales is fired, down round follows, this is the usual suspect. Normally, first we fire people because we blame that the people are the problem. The people never are the problem. It's very rare that the people are the problem. And when they are the problem, it's so vivid, it's so there. Most times, it's the process that's the problem. If you think you're doing good and you're hiring people, or if you think you're doing bad and you're firing people, it's a reflection of what the process is. But most importantly, it's not that the people, you're losing time. You're losing time. You're no longer first to scale. You're losing your market position. You go from a top 3 to a top 10 kind of role in the industry. So let's rewind. Where does it go wrong? Right there. I have $8.6 million in ARR. Where did that come from? Now I noticed that it says 3 million from enterprise, 5 million from SMB, and 0.6 million from PLG. Oh, it is not from one GTM motion. So let's visualize that. This enterprise motion, and we look at it, enterprise is just a couple of big wins. And oh, by the way, it was performed by a few of the AEs who used to be part of the SMB AE sales team, and they closed the deal. And now we promoted them to enterprise reps. SMB is still using outbound spamming, just volume. Let's hit them hard, right? And again, I've seen this before with a person who's walking around the floor with a baseball bat. Again, if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't mention it. It happens. Let's send some emails. Let's make some calls. Let's go. Dialing for dollars. And PLG is actually primarily lead gen. They don't really have a PLG product. It's just a hip thing to do right now. So let's throw something on our website, say we're PLG, and let's add some whatever to it, and boom, we got a lead gen campaign, right? It's lead gen. What that means is if I put that numbers in here and I see where that is at, I got an early PLG go-to-market motion. That, if you look at the numbers, PLG came in at what? 0.6 million, 5 from SMB, and 3 from enterprise. So I got 0.6 PLG. This is a skill that shows you. I'm just making a point whether the scale is exactly right. You get the idea. Enterprise came in, or was it 2 million? Or 3 million? 3 million, and PLG came in at 5. So I got 0.6, 3, and 5 million. That's what I got down here. Well, if I look at the PLG or SMB motion, SMB means higher volume, but we notice that we haven't invested in CS, so churn is so high that growth is held back. We hire more sellers, because we see it grow down, same thing that we just spoke about. Therefore, we have a hunger for leads. So now the lead flow goes up in the company. The lead quality drop, which is natural. Growth slows down as churn, outpaces the wins while the costs go up. Recipe for failure happens a lot. It's one of the very common reasons that we step into. Number 2, we see that the enterprise sales was based on 2 SMB reps who closed an enterprise deals. That by itself is not scalable. As we go outbound to more enterprise wins, it is not as easy as it looked. Those first couple ones came inbound, but as soon as we switch to outbound, our product really isn't designed for enterprise, it's not holding up, and the sellers are unable to navigate around the roadblocks that their enterprise buyers are throwing to them. So that is unsustainable. And on top of that, PLG, like I said, marketing motion, like folks, it's good, but we don't really have a PLG product. PLG is a mindset. It's not just a go-to-market motion. It sits with the creation of the product. It sits all the way back to the founder. They thought of this as a PLG motion. They built the product for that and so on. It's not something that we just tack on as a marketing campaign. All these 3 things means that I'm unable to scale across multiple GTMs. None of them have been optimized. None of them scales. That's unsustainable. Why? Because each of them need a separate marketing campaign. Each of them has a separate methodology. Like my SMB team may use Band. My enterprise team may use Medic. They may use different tools. My SMB team may use Outreach or SalesLoft. My enterprise team may use whatever other tools. My PLG team use like low touch with on-sign drift, right? Like all these things, different tools, different things. This explodes. I'm at like a certain level $1 million and I got multiple things. This is not sustainable. All those products need to be paid for and experts need to be trained on and so on and so forth. This does not scale. Folks, that is what happens post, right around round C. The inability to scale across multiple GTMs. If you combine that with what we said earlier, hey, we're losing, like clients, which is essentially, is representative of net revenue retention, NRR. And we look at what we see at the bottom, the churn that I spoke about earlier. As soon as you start building that complete picture, what you start to see is that this particular picture. And in this picture, what you see here is that essentially the key breakpoints that are unsustainable. First one is no product market fit. No surprise there. Customer can't find, can't price it out. That happens between seed and around A round. Second, between A and C, the go-to-market fit. The customer cannot find its way on a right go-to-market fit. Is it SDRs? Is it enterprise? They're tinkering. They can't make it scalable. It's the growth from expansion that triggers later on. They do not make the switch to customer success. They're not able to scale across multiple GTMs. They're not able to use and understand what net revenue retention and drive that up, not just by acquiring new customers, but by value-added campaigns. And essentially they drive into productivity. That is what you get. That's what this is where you add up. You see the breakpoint down here. I take 100 seed funded companies. I have 45 left. I have 27 left, 14 left. These are the breakpoints as reported in the industry as those companies that have a hard time keeping the growth up. These are the numbers. So I want you just to understand that if I want you to think of a picture as unsustainable, to send 100 patients into a hospital and having one come out healthy and then say like, don't ask about the other 99. Shh, don't ask. Let's celebrate the one that came out. That one is healthy. Look, I'm not saying that there's 100 successful stories about these 100. There's not. There should be a natural breakpoint, and product market fit is a natural breakpoint. What I'm saying is somewhere down the line, we shouldn't feel like what is unsustainable is that only 1 in 100 is successful. We can do better. We can do 3 out of 100, or 4 out of 100, maybe even 5 out of 100. I'm not trying to get 50 out of 100. It's natural for companies to fill. But 1 out of 100, that's a little problematic. Here I'm going to give you some of these growth metrics. This is from Bessemer. Fantastic work. Bessemer has a fantastic, it's how to get to 100 million. This is part of that. I highly recommend that you look at that. What I'm going to use is I'm going to show you some of these metrics down here. Okay, you see those metrics, 200, like ARR growth. Some of these metrics are very relevant and they match exactly onto this. And it tells us what we need to focus on. If we now map that to the growth stages and we map that to where the burnout is, you see the like, okay, we lost another tranche. We mark what is the key metrics. These are the things early on in the startup stage. Revenue is key. Growth is a scale-up key. Profitability is a grown-up key. And productivity is key in the enterprise. These are the 4 stages you go to. As I said earlier, what makes you successful in one will make you fail in the next if you stay on that focus. You cannot stay focused on revenue. You got to start thinking about growth, and that growth is going to come from customers buying more. And that tells you what the key metrics are. Early on, how many deals did we win? 4 deals, 5 deals, 10 deals, 1,000 users. You measure in PLG. You think about how many people. Sooner or later, that turns into revenue. That revenue turns into growth rate. That growth rate starts to become at what kind of cost? Can I keep growing that per GTM? Yes, it's a scalable GTM. That brings me to net revenue retention, where early on, I'm now starting to measure how much money am I making. That gets me to profit. And then I'm going to look at, hey, are my people generating enough? Those are the higher level metrics. Here are the lower level, the metrics that are one layer deeper. Where do we go from there? So deals one is at the bottom. You see, what is the ASP? What is the discount level, right? That's what you look at early on in those days. And as you progress, you go deeper into these metrics. These are the metrics. And what I'm going to draw to you is your attention at that thing. What you see down there, that is key. That thing, what is that? What is that thing? What is that? I want to know what that is. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what's going to help you. That is called the growth formula. What the growth formula does is it makes sense out of all this. It starts thinking about, I got the data model. What am I going to do with the data model? Well, I got to create a growth formula. And that growth formula that I'm creating down here looks at that funnel and says, like, in this case, again, this is anonymized but realistic data. 284 leads turned in. Those 284 leads took a certain amount. I took those 284 leads for an inbound campaign, and I got 9 opportunities out of that. That, duck, Jocko, duck, or let me move around, let me slide. There is a qualification on situation and pain, but as a result, we got 84%. We only qualified if the people had the right profile on LinkedIn. We went in high. Let's say that that is okay. It's not okay, but let's say that this is really what happened. That converts into the amount of wins. So I got 8 deals converting at, like 2.5 wins at a 23.3% discount. That turned that average deal size into 18,408. Okay. Next thing that I see, that deal, right? I win 2.5 deals, so 2.5 times 18.4. That gets me to that $45,000. I move to the funnel. I go to the back end. I see, like, in year 1, slide, Jocko, slide. I see now that in year 1, how much revenue that retained. I add my retention and expansion. I see that $45,000 with some onboarding churn that I experienced percentage-wise across thousands of companies. I got down to $47,747. I expand nicely in year 2 and in year 3. I grow that, and you'll see that I naturally grow. And at the end, I have this customer lifetime that presents 275. This is the first attempt to a growth formula. The problem is it is not yet applicable. It's not usable. To make it usable, I'm going to make it, and what we call, I'm going to make it normalized. I normalize that growth formula. I say, like, hey, if I make that to 1, if I divide everything on the left, or I divide 284 by 2.5, I'm going to normalize that at 1. And now I got my growth formula. It takes me on average 114 leads to drive 3.7 opportunities, and so on. This is your growth formula. It takes 114 leads. This is a first step in the revenue architecture of sustainability world, where we can see what is happening in our number. It requires an entire view on the bow tie. This is a metric that we can debate, we can look on, is it right, is it wrong, per GTM. If you have an SDRAE organization, what does they do? If you have an enterprise organization, what do they do? If you have a PLG, what does this look like? We need to know this model within reasonable accuracy that require us to have that conversation. That is what happens there. That allows us in the future to make that decision. That's where we're at. Because, like I said, that drop-off rate is, is just too high. That should not be that case. And we should have another win in there. Therefore, we have some actions to take. And with that said, I'm going to take the first group of actions. What can we do in the startup world? In the startup world, the action we take is create a uniform data model. Develop that growth formula. You need to know that. Benchmark, not against third party, against yourselves. How are we doing right now? Which metric is going? Is it trending up or down? Is win rate trending up or down? Is discount level trending up or down? What if we improve that? Go back to this formula. What if we improve this by from 23% and we bring it down to 18%? What if we bring this up? Calculate it out, show and demonstrate that. And when you do that, benchmark, that's what I call benchmarking against yourself. Show the impact and demonstrate to the customer what can happen there. A very key simplistic action, which you can take down here, is what Julie will talk about. Julie, tell me, what is this action?
Oh, this is a fun one. So one of the things that we want to do, right? We talked about how keeping your existing accounts and getting them to recurring impact is so important. So proactively identify the at-risk customers and actually turn them around, right? Don't just save them. Don't just wait for them to say, we're not going to renew. Go out, proactively talk about the impact, ask questions, do discovery, and actually turn them into expansion opportunities.
Now, what is one of the great things you ask a customer, Julie? I'm a customer, I'm 6 months in, 7 months in. And what is a question? When you said it the other day, it sounded so crisp to me. Can you repeat that so other people feel the same crispness in that?
Totally. So, hey, Jacko, you're 6 months in. Just out of curiosity, if you had to renew today, would you?
That's a question that tells me where I'm at. That's a question that tells me. If the customer says yes, it gives me potential opportunity. Oh, may I ask what? If the customer says no, absolutely not. It's a close-ended question that gives you an immediate reason to follow an open-ended question. Simple question, super key. And currently in this economy.
And here's where trading really comes into play, because if a customer says no, so often we want to say, why not? Right? That's our knee-jerk reaction. But with the right training with your CS team to ask questions, you actually say, what impact would you need to see in order to renew? We change the conversation from the negative to the positive to the proactive.
I love it. Okay, you didn't have that conversation with me last time, but you didn't say that, but I love that even better. Thank you. Okay, I love that point of view. What impact do you seek after? Like, this is a clear case. Now, what you see underneath down here is like the 3 metrics. I put them on a single slide and I put the skills gap. The reason I do all this is so that you can take a screenshot, and use this into your internal communication if you wish to do so. Okay, next, so that put me into the startup mode. If I go to the scale-up mode, I notice that growth is super important. I'm looking at growth rate, client acquisition cost, and net revenue. Julie, talk to me a little bit about what are the action items in this particular category?
Yeah, so this is the biggest opportunity where you said, right, what you were doing before, it needs to change. So now we're in growth mode. So growth mode means expanding your existing accounts even more. So you probably have products that you can expand into. So it's going beyond just the natural expansion of usage and seats and whatnot. It's going to be to new products, but also into cross-sell and upsell, right? And so often, especially in startup world, we're holding our clients so close to our chest saying, okay, we don't want to share them with anyone. Now this is the opportunity to bring in account managers to create the pod and to create those account plans, re-diagnose impact, create that buyer's journey or that customer success journey to re-diagnose and redefine impact at every single stage. Are you measuring first impact? Are you getting customers to first value? Are you measuring impact at that QBR? And I love this last point, right? Making NRR the top level metric. We're changing from that new logo growth metric to net revenue retention.
Now, what Rowie, one of our esteemed revenue architects, pointed out earlier to me is how does it, he said, people may misunderstand how this applies to PLG. And so, how do you go wider and deeper in a PLG account? Well, in PLG, customers that we represent, and some of you know the names, I think, they're well-known names. I do not know which ones are released, but well-known PLG clients. And we call them, our clients are what we call industrial grade PLG clients. They are like clients with, I think the biggest one has over 1 billion customers. Yes, 1 billion people who have used their product. The way you go there is wider and deeper in an account like that is noticing that an account has, let's say, 2,000 prospects, but there's 200 people that are currently signed up. That means that you only have a 10% penetration rate. You go wider and deeper in an industrial grade PLG account like that as you're learning more about that account and address at senior level and say hey, we can offer you more if you make an entire commitment for the entire company. This is where you train the client teams, often very applicable to DevOps platforms, to apps that you're using on top of your CRM and stuff like that. That is where that fits in. What you see down here is a common skills gap that we see with organizations. They assume that people know. and they often don't.
Yeah, and on that note, I think quick call review will tell you that. But I just wanted to go back to the PLG thing really, really quick, because a very common misconception of PLG is that it has to be product led throughout the entire customer journey, whereas really the product led part can be a component, right? It's the lead gen part. You can get people engaged at certain elements if the product can give you those triggers and those actions.
Well, thank you. And I think that, like, I think you start to get the sense of what this is. Get the data model, get the growth formula, put these things together, start measuring, start, like getting the data. This is how you become sustainable. Last one up, profitability. What we see down here is when you're getting at the top, and many of us are not, like many companies are not there yet. This is post IPO or in that realm. I just want you to know, what are you hitting on beyond this? What is happening next after this? Well, what happens next after this is that we're going to look at measurement, or we're going to measure the productivity per rep. We're going to look for a very effective and efficient process to improve the productivity. And we're going to have an account plan, detailed account planning on accounts. We're going to move to multi-year contracts, where previously it may not be advisable because the annual 8% increase in revenue may be easier for you, or you get more revenue. At this point in time, multi-year contracts can make sense as it lowers your cost.
But this is also, right now is also when you want to move to multi-year contracts, right? So the economy is potentially unstable. We don't know what's happening. So it's such an incredible opportunity that so many people shy away from, right? Have your leaders or your CSMs reach out to your customers to ask them, how is the current economic situation affecting your company? I've done this several times to my clients, right? Half of them, no impact, right? They're not doing layoffs. That's not happening. Great. Do you want to lock in, right? That's a good opportunity because things are going well. But also, if things aren't going well, give them an opportunity to lock in for longer, keep them longer, and ride the wave with them.
If we combine those three, and thank you, Julie, for providing that depth there. What we're looking at those three, if you map that, this is the picture that describes us, what we're doing along the line. You see that I've grayed out at the top the productivity, and I'm now looking at it from this perspective. I see here what my metrics are. Early on, deals won, revenue, growth rate, client acquisition, and as I go along, as you saw how the data model balances itself, this is revenue architecture, is anticipate earthquakes, be there before the earthquake hits, design your business in preparation of that. That to me brings us to our closing today, after which Julie and I will remain online for those of you who want to ask direct questions. But as I come to a closing, I want you to understand that sustainable growth is ultimately, are you measuring and are you taking action on data? Because if you're not, then we don't know what sustainable is. Like, you're just growing, great. Sustainable growth is not covering, whatever price you spent at the coffee machine, or whether you buy expensive coffee or low cost coffee. We want to stay away from that. What it is very much on your go-to-market model. Are you measuring and are you deciding what is right for the company? Next, in order to do that, you got to move away from the funnel mindset. The easiest 3 actions that you can take, 3 actions. These 3 actions will draw all the conversation you need inside the company. That is all the right conversation. You move from a funnel to a bow tie. You need to make recurring revenue visible. You're going to normalize your data so everything looks right? Okay, I got it takes me on average X to Y, and then you create your growth formula. I want to make sure that I'm measuring it at the right spot, then I create my growth formula. These 3 things is your first step. For those of you who want to start there, don't feel real, want external help. Obviously, Winning It by Design, we have revenue architects that can help you with this, and that will go into a different conversation. What I'm talking about right now is, what can we do next? What do we do? Here's the metrics that we're going to look at. These are the metrics that we're going to look at. Deal metrics, revenue metrics. These are the 7 high-level metrics that we're talking about. Again, I will move to the other side in case people want to screenshot that. But these are the 7 metrics we're talking about. And that is how we're going to establish this. The other day, I was caught by this quote as I wrap up, we tend to over-rationalize the past. We look at everything and we go right? We over-rationalize it, we add more to it, and so on. We tend to over-dramatize the present. Okay, this is not enough leads, whatever it is, economy, this and that. But what we often completely forget or do wrong is that we underestimate the future. I believe that among these hundreds of companies across that are going wrong. There are companies that will make a difference for the world, that may have a financial difference. I believe that many founders have started that company for that reason. And I believe that many of you feel that desire and that need. I don't want you to fail just because you don't have a growth formula, you don't have an established data model, you're not switching to customer success. These are things that are key value in order to start, or key points to drive sustainable revenue. And with that, we have come to an end. I certainly enjoyed this today. It's my first time I delivered this particular speech. I would love, or particular talk. I would love to hear your feedback via LinkedIn. Please connect with me. I'm going to stay online. Julie and I are going to stay online. We're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to play the music for like a short period, just to give everybody a nice exit. And then after that, I'll be hanging around for those of you who have questions. With that said, on behalf of Julie, Sari, Roy, and myself, thank you very much. For those of you who have more questions, reach out via LinkedIn or reach out via any means that you find us out there. Here you go.